So let's talk about abduction because it really does happen, even though, even though maybe I won't even speak about a case in this video. Maybe we'll just look at the situation at hand when it really happens and why it's not a joke, not something you should throw around as an scapegoat. Let's just look at abduction.
Baby! The baby's here! The baby's here! Yeah, give me some light, mate.
Put him down and examine him. Yeah, put him on here. Put him on my jacket. Put him on my jacket.
Hi, it's okay.
All right, come. All right, monkey. Drop him in my plate. Get your police, Claire.
Theory at the moment, man wanted for a serious kidnap. Driven very dangerously. If the opportunity arises, tactical contact will be used.
Yes. Stand by.
Confirm your name, buddy.
James Dempsey.
Good lad.
We have a new videotape which shows how a police officer with nerves of steel saved a life. It happened in a Walmart. In a split second, a stranger seized a child, and ABC's Rob Nelson takes us through what police did, and we want you to know before you watch, some of this is very intense.
A mother and her two young daughters shopping at an Oklahoma Walmart. Little did they know that man right there was about to strike. As the mother turns toward a grocery shelf, 37-year-old Sammy Wallace snatches the 2-year-old girl from the shopping cart, holding a knife to the toddler. Here it is again, the toddler now in the stranger's arms.
911's medical emergency.
We need police at the Walmart.
What's wrong?
There's someone with a knife holding a little girl hostage.
First, the mom confronts him, and another shopper blocks the suspect in with his shopping cart. Police arrive, beginning 34 minutes of a meticulous rescue operation. The hostage negotiator works to build a rapport with the suspect, who has a violent arrest record and a history of mental illness, but it doesn't work.
Every time we felt like we could use some of the cues, in other words, talk to him about his family, his job, his interest, he would become erratic.
The team moves in a carefully choreographed formation, a police officer to either side of the suspect.
It's called triangulation. That way we can try to get a good shot if we need to.
Next, they offer him a chair, their goal to stop him from moving, a controlled target. Suddenly, the suspect starts counting down from 60 seconds. Police fear they are out of time.
His eyes got really wide. He moved a knife from her stomach area up underneath her throat.
The police act. Watch the one officer crouch down as the second officer, just out of sight, begins to speak, distracting the suspect, who turns his head to the left just for a second, but it's the opening Captain David Huff needed, moving forward, shooting the suspect at point-blank range, pulling the toddler to safety.
Captain Huff's actions were extremely heroic, and he waited to the very last moment.
Quick thinking by police, saving a lucky little girl who tonight is back with her very grateful mother. Rob Nelson, ABC News, New York.
A quick-thinking gas station clerk rescued a kidnapping victim in Northern California. This happened Wednesday afternoon. Police say the woman came into that gas station begging for help. She said she had been kidnapped and convinced her captors to stop so she could use the restroom, but they were waiting with guns in a car outside. The clerk discreetly handed the woman her cell phone to call 911, then locked her in the bathroom. The clerk also locked the front door, but didn't want to let the kidnapper know that she was onto them, so she let them inside.
I knew that if I left the door locked, they would have caught on to something and probably took off. So I went back up there and I unlocked the door. They seriously had no idea that I knew anything.
Minutes later, a police officer stormed in and arrested the 4 suspects. Police say the victim was kidnapped a day earlier and sexually assaulted. The clerk says she doesn't consider herself a hero. She's just grateful that the victim is safe back home with her family.
Police are praising 2 Good Samaritans who helped find a kidnapped 8-year-old girl. Investigators say Salim Sabatka was abducted on Saturday. CBS This Morning national correspondent Jerika Duncan is in Forest Hill, Texas, where this little girl has been found and she's safe. Jerika, this is the best possible outcome. She's safe and he's behind bars. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you. We don't hear about these types of stories very often, but it was here inside this hotel that 8-year-old was found along a very busy highway. Thanks to 2 Good Samaritans, now 51-year-old Michael Webb is in police custody charged with aggravated kidnapping.
She's in custody. We have her.
From a podium last night, police played the dispatch call that went out when Salim Sabatka was found. Relieved friends and neighbors eagerly listened.
I'd like to give you all a hand as the citizens in this community for pulling together the way you did.
At around 2:20 a.m., police located the 8-year-old girl nearly 8 hours after she was kidnapped.
I guess I was like a cheerleader or something. I don't know, because I started screaming like, yeah!
Surveillance video captured the moment Salem was taken Saturday evening. Police say her mother jumped into the suspect's car frantically trying to save her. The driver pushed her to the ground and sped off.
Miss Sweet valiantly fought with the male that abducted her child. So much so that she was able to grab a piece of jewelry off of that male.
Hours after issuing a statewide Amber Alert, 2 witnesses reported a tip to police. They had spotted the suspect's car in the parking lot of a hotel where Salem and her kidnapper were eventually found. Police busted in the hotel room door and took Michael Webb into custody.
Thank you. Jeff King.
Pastor Jeff King was one of those witnesses.
It was like an overjoying experience, and then it's crazy. It was like adrenaline. It was everything. So,
do you feel like a hero?
I feel like God allowed me to be a tool, and that's it.
Police have not announced a motive, and now Webb faces additional charges. Anthony?
Jerika, do we know anything more about the suspect?
Well, we do know that the suspect apparently has a criminal history. According to court records, last year he was charged with sexual assault, but according to authorities, the accuser decided she did not want to cooperate. Anthony?
Jerika, thank you.
So glad Salem is okay.
Yes. So
you hear that story and you think, the outcome may not be good. This is wonderful.
Tape. Here we see a man who would soon be known as Craig Bonello walking nervously around a Dollar General store. Shockingly, he grabs a 13-year-old teen who is shopping with her mother and attempts to drag her out the front door. The mother fights back and stops the attempted kidnapping. CCTV footage released by police shows an older man attempting to lure a child from his mother at a shopping mall. Here we see surveillance footage that has captured a man in Washington carrying a child and running. The children had been left under the supervision of their babysitter by their father, but on that day were playing alone in the park in their town. The man approached the 3 children and ripped the 22-month-old from his stroller. He was chased by the infant's sister and brother, and it was the sister's screams that hampered his kidnapping attempt. He dropped the child in a vacant lot and continued running. This is footage of how a kidnapping came to an end. A man forced a woman at gunpoint into her car after beating her and drove off. At a stoplight, she mouthed, "Help me," to 2 teenagers in the car next to them, to which the teenagers dialed 911. The teenagers trailed the car for miles until the police arrived. You can see the woman is so thankful she gets out of the car and hugs a police officer. Charles Atkins Lewis Jr. was charged with aggravated kidnapping and was placed on $50,000 bail.
Driver, let me see your hands. Driver, let me see your hands. Step out. Step out. Step out. Put your hands on top of the car. Put your hands behind your back.
We see a young mother walking into a mobile phone store. She was holding her baby while her 4-year-old daughter played with a candy machine by the door. Panic and shock then ensues when a man quickly reaches inside, jerking the girl from the store and fleeing. The man is subdued shortly after by bystanders and the girl returned to her mother. After the incident, the woman mentioned to the store owner that she had noticed a strange man watching her and her family very closely when she entered the store, but didn't think he would follow her. The man was spotted immediately after the incident, sitting in the middle of the street, laughing before running away. A man by the name Terry Ransom was later arrested for the crime. This footage is taken from a security camera at an apartment complex. The video shows a man walking toward the camera and a young 7-year-old girl exiting her apartment. The man then snatches the girl after she refused to come to him when asked. A few feet later, she kicks free of his arms, and the man runs away. Police were called by the mother, and they are still looking for the person responsible.
I heard my daughter screaming, and I ran outside to see what was wrong with her. And I asked her, she said someone tried to snatch her.
Tabitha Bridges says it happened almost right in front of her eyes. She was sitting on a stairwell in her apartment building while her 7-year-old daughter and some other children played outside.
She said he asked her to come here, and she said no. So he grabbed her and tried to run off with her, and she kicked out his arms.
This is some of the last footage of Cherish Periwinkle. Cherish was abducted from Walmart and then raped and killed by convicted sex offender Donald Smith, who you can see in the video. If you don't know the full story of this little girl and what happened to her, I've included a link that you can take a look at in the description. Thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to hit the subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber to be notified.
So you see, it's not that I don't take abduction seriously, just that I don't believe Donald Wells's BS. I know I said I wasn't going to fix any cases in here, but that's why we're talking abduction currently, because it's just been oozing out of his mouth. This is a serious subject. This is a scary, scary ass subject. Is it more believable than an accident at a lake? Hell no. Not all things considered in the Wells' particular story. But it does happen, and it's happening every single day. So it's actually a little frustrating that that would just come flying out of his mouth. Like, yeah, let's just go with this. If you buy it, you buy it. And if it's true, well, it will just be wrong at the end of the day. But I don't believe it's true. But I do know it's a scary, scary thing that people are actually going through in real life. And there's facts and footage and a trace of some sort to back it up, other than just what's coming out of people's lying ass mouths. For instance, Cherish Periwinkle. This really happened, Don. I mean, everyone.
A frightening attempted kidnapping as a mother walked with her children in Queens.
A stranger grabs her 5-year-old son right off the sidewalk and then tries to drive off. CBS 2's Jenna DeAngelis spoke to that mother today. She's live in Richmond Hill with more on this. Jenna.
Christina, Dick, there's really no other way to describe this than a parent's worst nightmare. It happened here on Hillside Avenue. The mother was walking on the sidewalk with her kids when one of the suspects swooped in. Shocking surveillance video shows the man getting out of a parked car, running toward the family and snatching the little boy. His mother and her 2 other kids rushed to the car trying to get in, but it was locked.
Oh my God, when the mom, oh my God, reaction is quick and say, oh my God, my kids, please.
Dolores Diaz described the moments her motherly instincts kicked in.
When my kid stand up in the window, I take it out.
You can see her yank 5-year-old Jacob out of the car, which then speeds away, nearly hitting someone.
The people coming because I'm screaming, and the people coming and help me. One lady coming, called the police.
This happened Thursday night around 8 p.m. on Hillside Avenue near Myrtle Avenue. The mother says the man and passenger in the car, both suspects, are strangers who said nothing to her. The owners of this store recognized the guy wearing white who stopped in earlier.
Last night he's coming in, one guy. He's buying a beer, Budweiser.
It is very scary. On the store door, the NYPD put up posters showing a picture of the 2 suspects. One in his 30s, the other believed to be 50 to 60 years old. This video circulating around the neighborhood has people in shock.
Like a pretty safe neighborhood. I see kids on my block all the time, but I've never seen anything like that happen before. It's kind of scary.
When I watch it, oh my God, really? Me?
But the mother is just grateful to have her 3 children home safe.
Today I feel good. Thanks God, I feel good.
Along with the 2 suspects, police are also on the lookout for an older model maroon 4-door sedan. Christina, Dick.
Jenna, it's hard to believe this can even happen on a sidewalk like this in a neighborhood. How is that 5-year-old doing today?
Well, Christine, thankfully he wasn't hurt. He's back home. We actually met him earlier. He's adorable and I think just happy to be with his mother and his family.
All right, Jenna, we wish that family well, and we hope police find those suspects quickly.
Brave mother, yeah.
Thank you, Jenna.
Thanks, Jenna.
This sweet little girl is being returned to her family, 4 years old, after being kidnapped. Rebecca Lewis.
She's got me going. Oh, I bet.
Now that is beautiful. All stories don't end that way.
On my phone.
No, 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 they don't all end that way. These are real stories. Your baby's close, and don't take your eyes off them for a second. Not even a second.
Was just on my phone, on Facebook, looking at all the Amber Alerts people posted of this little girl and the man. And so when I left lunch, it was still fresh on my mind. And I just saw a man holding a little girl's hand walking towards me. So I slowly turned around again. And when I turned back around, I was like, positive, that's that little girl from that picture.
Just last hour, we're hearing the just that emotional nurse there telling us what she saw. That's the nurse at the hospital in Memphis who spotted 4-year-old Rebecca Lewis. Lewis was kidnapped by a man who changed his legal name to West Wild Hogs. He's now in jail in Tennessee and breaking in just the last hour. Lewis, you see right there, was reunited with her family. They just met her at Lakeland Linder Airport. That's where we find our Ryan Raish right now. He joins us with more on that reunion. Ryan?
Yes, there's an emotional, touching reunion just a few moments ago here at the Lakeland Linder Regional Airport. It was actually an FDLE plane that flew 4-year-old Rebecca just a little while ago, and what a whirlwind, 48 hours, probably confusing for her, kidnapped by an old family friend who had a falling out with them 2 years ago, but certainly a happy ending. I want to show you just a few moments ago, it was Rebecca's grandmother and 4-year-old Rebecca herself. Take a listen.
Thank you for bringing me home.
Thank you, bring me home.
Tell him bye-bye, we're going home.
Bye-bye, I'm going home.
That's right.
How adorable is that? That was the emotional moment. Rebecca finally reunited with her parents. The FDLE flew her back home to Lakeland from Memphis, Tennessee, where they finally tracked down her and her kidnapper. We now know it was a nurse tech at a hospital who happened to recognize his car, as you heard there a few moments ago, and called security. Police arrested West Wild Hogs without incident, and 4-year-old Rebecca was checked out, and she is okay. The family obviously didn't want to let Rebecca out of their arms. From here, they're going to go home to a pretty awesome homecoming. Some businesses in the area donated food and some decorations. They're going to celebrate tonight. It's pretty cool to have everyone back home.
Super cool. Great, great ending. Like I said, not all the stories have happy endings. Title of this video says it all. Abducted, raped, and left to die in a field at 8 years old. Jennifer Schuett's story. We're going here because Don Wells is screaming abduction, abduction, abduction. He's got his fan club that are saying, stop making up stuff about her falling and bumping her head. Stop saying her parents could have done something with her, because that's never happened. Let's be realistic. Somebody came up on that rural property and abducted her. It's just funny every time I say it, no matter how I say it. And I was totally being sarcastic then, but it doesn't matter. I can't say it seriously because I don't believe it happened. But that's really how they feel. So we're going to talk about it and pray to God none of this is happening to Summer Wells. At the same time, Donna Wells, you should be praying to God that it is, because, honey, if I'm right about you, oh, they're going to hate you when this is all over. Those same fans that are carrying those torches for you, they're going to light your ass on fire. That is the nature of the internet, sweetheart. But back to Jennifer, who really was abducted, raped, and left to die in a field at 8 years old. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. This happened. Let's make sure we say her name and learn her story.
I mean, I have nothing other than her, and I need her back.
From the archives, we go back to 1990, where the survival story of Jennifer Schuett begins. Now, all grown up, she takes us back to the night a man stole her from her bed. The night she was left for dead. After 19 years, the face in Jennifer's memory has a name, and police have a man in custody. The clues, the waiting, and what finally broke the case.
Plucked from a child's memories, police reports, and even our own news coverage. It all adds up to a journey to justice for one little girl. Has the story, Jennifer's story.
In the summer of 1990, Jennifer Schuett was 8 years old, and she was counting down the days before starting third grade. But Jennifer never made it to her first day back at school. Someone had left her tiny, bruised, and broken body in an abandoned lot.
I could, through blades of grass, see vehicles going by.
She was just feet from moving traffic, within earshot of children playing.
There was a dog that kept coming up to me, barking, and then running away, trying to tell his owner that something was wrong.
But the 8-year-old couldn't make a sound, couldn't move.
I knew I was going to die. I knew I was. And all I did was just lay there and pray.
August 10th, 1990. Police say someone had taken Jennifer from her bedroom, raped her, cut her throat, and left her bleeding in this field. And while Jennifer lay here, helpless, 4 miles away, her mother found an empty bedroom.
I didn't hear anything. I got up in the morning and she was gone.
Elaine Schuett says her daughter often slept with her, but on that night, sometime around 2:30 in the morning, exhausted, Schuett sent a restless Jennifer to her own bed, in her own room, down the hall.
She's the only thing I have. I mean, that is my baby.
August 10th, 1990, the Dickinson Police Department got a call, a missing child.
And I have nothing else. I mean, it's just been us two together.
With no time to waste, seemingly everyone started looking.
Jennifer is 4 feet tall. She weighs 45 pounds. She has dark brown hair and blue eyes.
And I need her back.
But how does a child disappear in the middle of the night? Back then, neighbors at the Yorktown apartments told us since the air conditioners were often broken, it wasn't at all uncommon to see windows left open overnight. In the heat of a Houston summer, it was the only relief. But was it also an entry point? A resident showed us just how easy it would be to reach in.
My bet is maybe the guy someone walked by who was drunk or on drugs.
The big question became, where was Jennifer?
It affected this community and the surrounding communities.
Everyone held their breath as the hours just ticked by.
Just about everybody out here has got at least 2 kids.
Heck, you don't expect this to happen. It's so close to you, you know.
Then, late in the afternoon, some news.
On the other side of town, Jennifer was found in a field off of California Street by some neighborhood children who were playing behind their house.
So this field was just like, you know, one for them to run around and play in, and they had their own little hideout fort type of thing. Not too long ago, it was last year, I talked to one of the kids on the phone that had found me, and it was really emotional for me talking to him, and he was telling me that it was kind of raining that day. I think that they thought that I was dead.
She wasn't far from it, barely breathing, hundreds of fire ant bites, and tremendous blood loss.
I remember being put into the life flight helicopter. I remember them putting me into the elevator. I remember the first officer on the scene talking to me, telling me to stay with him, that everything was going to be okay. I remember hearing children's voices, but I don't actually remember them, you know, coming up and finding me. My first memory is the first officer on the scene.
Paramedics rushed Jennifer by life flight to John Seeley Hospital in Galveston.
She was left in that field, probably to die, and thanks to the Lord, that's the only reason she has lived.
Family and friends hurried to the hospital where no one seemed quite sure if Jennifer would survive.
Her injuries are a laceration to the neck with an open trachea.
She's just a baby, and it's not fair. They shouldn't do these to kids.
With Jennifer found alive, the next question to come was,
I mean, who would do such a thing?
An empty field, the site of the brutal rape and attempted murder of a child, a story that rocked the very foundation of the small Dickinson community. Everybody wanted to know who had done it. The best chance to catch the attacker laid in the mind of an 8-year-old girl, a girl who couldn't speak. KPRC Local 2 anchor Joel Eisenbaum continues our story now with the artist police hope would unlock the clues hidden inside Jennifer.
Word of Jennifer Schuett's abduction and brutal attack spread through Dickinson. Mothers and children who called the Yorktown Apartments home were frantic.
It's terrifying, and it's scary to even live here anymore.
Everybody's boarded their windows. They bought guns.
Could have been my little girl.
While the 8-year-old laid silent in a hospital room, her friends and neighbors were back home worried.
Hi, Jennifer. How you doing? And I hope you feel well when you get out of the hospital.
Worried not only about Jennifer's survival, but what would happen next. Jennifer says she knows why it hit home.
I hear everybody knows everybody kind of thing that, I mean, I grew up playing sports with these people. I went to school with these people, and I mean, since pre-K on up.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like everybody knows everybody, and when something happens like that in a small community, it affects everyone. Yeah.
Taken from her bedroom, Jennifer was discovered less than 4 miles away. Police mowed the field where she was found with her throat slashed, and they found a pile of clothes just 3 blocks away. But remember, it was 1990. DNA testing was not yet advanced enough to help. Clues at the scene were limited. No one had seen anything, and the only witness couldn't speak.
She's in and out, in a lot of pain, and she cannot talk, so there are some details that we haven't gone into with her, and we hope to later on this week.
Police needed something to go on, someone to search for. They needed a lead, so they called on one of their newest employees, Lois Gibson.
I'd been on the job less than 1 year when I got the call.
A painter for most of her life, Lois had turned to forensic art to help victims put a face on their attackers. Quite frankly, she was still trying to convince the police department she was useful.
I don't think people took my sketches seriously, and I understand back then I had just started.
Maybe not, but law enforcement was calling her more and more, and she got one of those phone calls August 14th, 1990, 4 days after Jennifer's attack. Lois found herself heading south to Galveston.
It was unspeakable, and I drove down. I just kept thinking, this is impossible that this girl's alive. I can't believe this happened.
Lois made her way to John Seeley Hospital, to the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit.
You could see the mother sort of willing her to live, and everybody, the staff, everybody like, she's going to live.
Lois says the only thing you could see through the tubes and bandages were Jennifer's eyes.
And I turn around and look at her great, big, beautiful blue eyes and just get punched in the stomach with, I can't believe that this happened to her. But that's part of my job. So I keep happy. When I want to cry, I don't cry. And I just went through that struggle. And she at least wanted to engage in this, which sometimes children don't. She wanted to draw the picture. She knew what I was going to do.
That was more true than Lois could have known at the time. Locked in tortured silence because of the wound on her neck, Jennifer says what she couldn't tell anyone then is she had a plan.
Ever since I was in the hospital, that's what I've always wanted and thought about, is him being caught so that he couldn't do this to anyone else.
And that meant remembering everything.
One of the nurses had a daughter, and as soon as I knew that she had a daughter, I kind of attached to her. Was so afraid that he would even go after her daughter. You know, just thoughts of that at 8 years old, thinking that he would just go for anyone that he could, or even come back for me, you know, and finish me off. I mean, I always have wanted to remember, because I've always wanted him to get punished for what he did.
She was so urgent about wanting to do a drawing.
So Lois picked up her books, and the two of them started.
I have a book with noses and lips and eyes and all kinds of features, and I show the witness, I showed her these pages and slowly allowed her to point at the different features. Of course, it was frustrating, and she was so injured, and her mother was there, and she couldn't talk, and nobody believes I can do this, and I was a rookie, and I didn't have any confidence. Of course, it was frustrating. That's just normal.
Even today, Lois remembers it all.
So I'd ask a question, and she'd either mouth some words, or she'd write, and she'd point. It was very frustrating, and I'm sorry that she experienced that. She remembers the frustration. That's normal, but she didn't know it. Nothing was normal about her, about what happened to her. She was strong, and she was determined, and she was going to work hard. She was willing to work hard, and she was just so beautiful. Heartbreaking, beautiful eyes. I was really upset at how pretty she was.
In the end, this is the face they created.
It seemed like it took forever, but it probably did just take one really long, torturous hour.
And Lois and Jennifer weren't done. Jennifer remembered something else.
I hate doing cars. It's the worst thing for me to draw. I'd rather draw anything.
But she did it, and so did Jennifer.
And I have no idea how I did that well. I think one of the detectives got me a photograph of some kind of make that she thought it was like.
They drew the car Jennifer remembered from that night.
And it was kind of like it's not perfect, but it's really close. And then to get the color, I just kept scribbling different colors and blending them together.
The two spent the most time getting that right.
So I kept mixing colors till she said that, and I circled it. And you can see a little fingerprint.
In the end, Lois walked away with what would be the first public glimpse of the little girl's attacker and his car.
When I showed up for that sketch, I knew the pressure was so big that the payoff would be so huge if I could do a good sketch, because this guy was a monster and I'd be able to find a monster, and the pressure was unbelievable. No matter how many years you've been on the job, you're not going to be ready for that.
In the days after that sketch, Jennifer continued to improve.
She is improving. As of yesterday, she began talking on her own. We feel with each day she is progressing, and she is remembering more and more each and every day.
I had no voice, and they said that I would never be able to talk again. By the grace of God, I started talking one day in the hospital, and I haven't been quiet since.
It has been 19 years now since Lois first walked into that hospital room. Today, the entire experience is tucked away in a well-worn file folder, a folder among thousands of other folders, faces without names, wanted men and women who've never been found.
That memory is one that every time I hit it, I pulled back like you touch a hot pot and you try not to burn yourself. I pull away and change the subject. In my mind, no, I pull away. The special hell for me is I remember everything. I'll never forget this case.
Looking at Jennifer Schuett, you see a vibrant young woman. A small scar on her neck is really the only outward appearance of the horrifying event that has shaped her life. Tonight, she takes us back 19 years to the night a man stole her from her bedroom and tried to kill her. KPRC Local 2 anchor Joel Eisenbaum talked with her and the two men who are now trying to find justice for Jennifer.
That bright 8-year-old who survived a brutal attack as a kid is now 27 years old. Jennifer Schuett has grown into a woman while waiting for justice.
There's been times when it's been hard, but I like to think of myself as a strong survivor, and I don't really play that victim role.
From those darkest days in the hospital, Jennifer has had one thing on her mind: finding the man responsible for leaving her in that field to die. So she embraces those awful memories, no matter how painful they may be.
Yes, I want closure, but it makes me stronger and keeps me going knowing that I can help other children that are out there possibly being victimized. And I mean, there might be little girls out there that didn't make it out of his attack.
As far as Jennifer knows, her attacker could be 1,000,000 miles away, in jail, or maybe someone she sees every day.
It could be anybody. I mean, it could be my neighbor. It could be, you know, a guy at the grocery store, someone driving next to me. But I can't let it run my life. So I don't live in fear. I just know that one day justice will be served and that he'll be in jail. I don't let it run my life. I can't, because it would drive me crazy.
Jennifer's clues, like the description of the man, his car with the dents in the driver's side door, the tear in the front seat. She hasn't wavered on a single detail since she told police in 1990.
Knowing who he is what I want. I just want to be able to look him in the face. I don't really want to ask him why, because I just don't think there's any valid answer for that. Knowing that he's in jail and that he can't hurt anyone else is what I want more than anything.
The road that we're coming down, that was the way he actually drove me.
Even today, Jennifer says she drives the route they took that night, and she still remembers every detail.
I was always terrified of the dark as a little girl, and why, I have no clue. But I always slept in bed with my mother, and that night I woke up and went into my own room, and the next thing I knew, I was being taken by him, and he put me in his car and drove off with me. He had my nose and mouth covered, so I couldn't really breathe. I couldn't scream for help.
She remembers he was calm.
He offered me candy. You know, he seemed like he was very comfortable in what he was doing. He asked me at one point if he was scaring me.
She remembers the knife he held against her throat and that he told her he was an undercover police officer.
I said, well, where's your gun then? And he told me it was in the back seat. So I leaned over the back seat to look for the gun, and he ripped my panties off.
After that, it gets blurry. There are just vague but agonizing images of the attack and the trip to the field.
I was unconscious, and all I remember is waking up to him dragging me through this field, and he left me over there in between some trees, where he slit my throat, basically from ear to ear, and left me there to die.
She could hear the children playing, a dog barking, but she couldn't lift herself up, and she couldn't make a sound.
I was basically being devoured by fire ants. I was just helpless. And I finally had the strength to reach up and touch my neck, and that's when I knew that he had slit my throat. But I couldn't really do anything about it. I just laid there until some children playing found me. And I think that was about 12 hours later.
Jennifer took us back to the apartment complex where she was abducted.
I've actually never been out of the car and come back, so I mean, it's a little weird, but you know, it's fine. I'm not emotional or anything.
The first memory from that night is right here.
I wasn't awake till about this point because I remember looking back, you know, and seeing my mom's car there. I looked up and saw his face, and I immediately tried to scream, but he covered my nose and mouth.
Jennifer could have put those memories in a box and buried them, but she says that's just not who she is.
I've always wanted to remember every detail that I could. I've always actually been scared of things being blocked out of my memory.
She wants it all crystal clear because one day she plans to sit in a witness chair face to face with the man who tried to kill her and tell her story one last time.
And I look forward to it.
Back in August, Jennifer shared the story with us for the first time on television, but she has said these words before.
She's been instrumental in some parts of the investigation.
She tells it again and again every time her case is passed to another hopeful investigator. The last time was more than a year ago when Dickinson police investigator Tim Cromie and FBI Special Agent Richard Renison were assigned Jennifer's case.
Like any crime, if it's not kept in public's eye, people start to assume it was solved. People start to assume that there was a conclusion. And after time, it does fade away.
So what can change in 19 years? In a word, science.
On the evidence that we're testing right now, there's no way that could have been tested and processed back in 1990s.
You see, in that evidence box, along with those sketches and Jennifer's account of what happened, is a pile of clothes, a little girl's shirt, and a man's pair of underwear.
In 1990, DNA was basically in its infancy, and in order to obtain a DNA sample, you needed a large quantity of whatever, blood, some bodily fluid or semen. You needed a large quantity. Today, you can get DNA from a single skin cell.
So Renison and Cromie threw a Hail Mary pass. They were about to put all their faith in a tiny piece of decades-old clothing.
We're retesting those, and hopefully we're going to be able to get a DNA profile of the offender.
If there's ever been a case with an opportunity to get to a closure, this would be one of those cases.
As the pair of investigators waits to see if their work's paid off, the pressure to solve this case is overwhelming.
It's frustrating because you want closure, you want to do something. We all want to do more than what we're doing right now for Jennifer. It's not that we're not trying, it's just we're not finding the right information, we're not getting the right clues. We're not getting that break that we need. And that's frustrating because we know that Jennifer wants closure. We want closure for her.
The thought of being the one to get that answer, to name him, to arrest him, that's what they wanted.
We look very forward to that. That'd be one of the highlights of my career.
I'm hoping he's in jail. But if he's not, I'm confident he will be soon. And that gives me a sense of relief.
Jennifer Shuett case had so many clues, a detailed sketch of the suspect, a drawing of the car, even an eyewitness who remembered everything. All those details that for 19 years led nowhere until one day last October when police got something they thought impossible. A name. KPRC Local 2 anchor Joel Eisenbaum continues our story.
As today, I received a phone call that an arrest in my case had been made.
That at 6:50 this morning, Detective Tim Cromie and Agent Renison with the FBI arrested Dennis Earl Bradford without incident.
And thank you wholeheartedly for keeping my case alive throughout all of these years.
A formal complaint was filed in Galveston County charging Dennis Earl Bradford with the attempted capital murder of Jennifer Shuett.
I hope that my case will remain as a reminder to all victims of violent crime to never give up hope in seeking justice.
On October 13, 2009, the 19-year-old cold case involving the abduction, rape, and attempted murder of 8-year-old Jennifer Shuett got a whole lot warmer.
It was without question one of those moments that all of us in law enforcement live for.
After almost 2 decades, Dickinson police detectives and really anyone who had touched the Jennifer Shuett case were blown away by the announcement. A 40-year-old man named Dennis Earl Bradford had been arrested in Arkansas.
Do you hope? Yes. Do you believe? Days like this makes you believe.
Captain Arnold Moreno worked Jennifer's case for 10 years. He says the arrest is like a ton of bricks being lifted off his chest.
One of the things that I told Jennifer is that we're not going to quit. Don't think because I have run into these obstacles that this is it.
It's just an exciting day for the Dickinson Police Department to solve this crime. It's unbelievable.
News traveled fast, and so did the excitement. Lois Gibson, the artist who had drawn the image of Jennifer's attacker all those years ago, couldn't believe it.
That made my day, month, year, life. I mean, if that's the only case I ever did.
The arrest was big news, and things were about to get a whole lot more interesting. Dickinson Police Chief Ron Morales revealed a driver's license picture of Bradford from that long ago summer.
You can compare this for yourself. We find them remarkably similar.
Amazing, the talent. 1 year on the job, and my hands did that close. I still don't believe it. I get it out and I look at it and I gloat.
Feelings of deja vu continue with another picture. Remember that sketch of a car? This is Bradford, that very same summer, sitting in a blue car that's eerily similar to that chalk drawing.
But that, to me, when I saw that right there, doesn't get too much closer than that. No.
And the hits just keep on coming as investigators continue to fill in the blanks. It turns out Bradford lived in these apartments just blocks from Jennifer Schuett's home and just miles from the field where she was left to die.
As part of the investigation, we didn't want to give away too much information before we got the affidavit and let anybody know that we were looking at him.
Putting aside the pictures, the most damning evidence, the piece that really landed Bradford in jail, his own DNA.
The DNA profile that was submitted and matched in this case, it matched a known person in that CODIS database.
The officers who caught up with Dennis Bradford say the real heroes in this case are the crime scene investigators here in Galveston County. You see, they collected evidence for tests that didn't even exist yet. And not only that, they kept it and preserved it for nearly 2 decades.
You have to understand that evidence was almost 20 years old. And to still have the DA up 20 years, that was just unbelievable.
The Galveston County Sheriff's Department collected the evidence at the scene and processed it and stored it, and it could not have been done any more perfect.
In 1990, labs needed large samples to even try to get a match. Today, all it takes is a single skin cell.
I don't know how they had the foresight or if it was luck or a little bit of both, but whichever the case is, they did it perfectly.
That's music to John Pruitt's ears. See, he's one of those Galveston CSI guys who collected that evidence.
It's important that we collect it, preserve it, to when we have to present it in court, there's no question about its integrity.
Pruitt is just one in a line of people who feels a sense of relief that this case may someday soon finally be closed.
We all did a good job. That, you know, we did what we originally set out to do, and then now that there's going to be justice for her.
Dickinson police officer Tim Cromie and FBI agent Richard Renison did what all those investigators before them had tried to do. Cromie and Renison did what they promised. They made an arrest.
In that room that day, you could not help but be moved by their determination and their dedication to Jennifer's cold case.
Now it's up to Galveston County to try and get a conviction.
The quality of the DNA evidence is truly, I believe, to be outstanding in this case. I mean, it put us over the edge as far as being able to proceed with obtaining the affidavit for arrest. So combine that with obviously Jennifer's knowledge about the events of the night and what happened to her, her drawing, and her recollection, specific things that we can't really discuss at this time. We're very comfortable with the charge, and we're looking forward to prosecuting the case.
And it looks like the star witness is ready to testify.
This event in my life 19 years ago was a tragic one. But today, 19 years later, I stand here and want you all to know that I am okay. I am not a victim, but instead victorious.
So, Joel, you were at that press conference. What was that like?
Probably the most memorable press conference I've ever been to. First of all, it was a tiny room. We were all jammed in there. We're talking about journalists, photographers, police, and then really a grand entrance from Jennifer Schuett. Nobody was quite sure what she was going to say, but you could instantly feel it. I mean, we're talking about probably 5 feet between myself and Jennifer, and you didn't even really have to look at her face. You could just hear her words, and you'd know that she had been waiting for that moment for 20 years.
You know, when I saw that sketch and then the driver's license picture of the suspect, I mean, that's uncanny.
I mean, It really is. It's almost a spitting image.
Mm-hmm.
What really got me, though, was the sketch of the car.
Right.
And you got to keep in mind, we're talking about an 8-year-old kid who's in the intensive care unit at a hospital. Critical condition, throat has been slashed, she can't talk, and yet she has to figure out a way to communicate with a perfect stranger and try to hammer out a decent sketch of the suspect in the car, and what they came up with was amazing.
It's remarkable, and I think a lot of people are wondering, who is this Dennis Bradford?
Exact same question we had. As soon as we saw that arrest video in Arkansas, North Little Rock, brought him in, we saw him in the handcuffs, we wondered if this is the guy who did this, and police say that it is the guy, we need to know what this man has been up to in the last 20 years. So we went up to Arkansas, essentially, and we were charged with finding that out.
A lot of digging on your part, Joel, and when we come back, we're going to have much more about where Dennis Bradford has been for the last 19 years. It's something you don't want to miss. Mystery that has haunted the Dickinson Police Department for almost 2 decades gets a break in the case. New DNA results bring back a name. That name takes investigators across state lines to arrest a man they say has been living on borrowed time. KPRC Local 2 anchor Joel Eisenbaum follows the trail of Dennis Bradford from Dickinson to Little Rock, Arkansas.
Well, the first day we were just in total shock.
The victim said that she never gave up hope.
Everything about it is tragic.
As today, I received a phone call that an arrest in my case had been made.
I said it's like a bad dream, and you're waiting to wake up from it.
Dennis Bradford's arrest made national headlines. A 19-year-old cold case cracked.
30, 40 years ago, a case like this probably never would have been solved.
Police say DNA did it, and now the man police believe brutalized a child has been brought back across state lines to Galveston County, a place he once called home.
He lived in the trailer park down the road, and every now and again he'd come by, and play his guitar.
That was in Dickinson in the late 80s, 5 years before young Jennifer Schuett would be left in a field just miles away.
He was calm, not temper, he didn't have a bad temper or anything like that.
Melinda Armbruster says the then 16-year-old Bradford was friendly. After hearing his name and seeing his face on TV, she realized the man in handcuffs was actually her old friend.
Were you shocked when you put 2 and 2 together and you knew it was
Well, yeah. It's like he lived right down the street from us.
So if investigators are right and Bradford is their man, where has he been all this time?
Yeah, he would just sit over in his swing over there on the porch and play his banjo.
And how could a man accused of kidnapping, raping, and nearly killing an 8-year-old girl have seemed so normal for so long to so many people?
The allegations don't match up, let's put it that way. I mean, it's not the guy that I know.
As the news spreads, more shocked neighbors, but this time in another state, Arkansas. That's where Bradford's been living, right across the street from Bill Musham.
Dennis is a very outgoing, very nice guy, great neighbor.
But just the same, 20 years after Jennifer's attack, it is Bradford being escorted by police and FBI agents from Arkansas back to a Texas jail.
It's probably a shock to everybody with, reading the allegations. It's bizarre. That's probably a good way of putting it.
He's just a big old teddy bear.
This is where Bradford worked as a welder, right up until the day he was arrested. Only nobody at this North Little Rock fence company had a clue about his past. But in hindsight, there were hints.
I mean, he's told me I've done some bad things in my days, Ronnie, that I'm not proud of.
For 8 years, Ronnie McPherson worked side by side with Dennis Bradford, and never once did he press his friend for details. The Dennis he knew was helpful, friendly, and funny.
My grandkids loved him. I don't see how he done it. I don't see how he could keep something like that inside of him without telling somebody.
In fact, shortly after the Jennifer Schuett crime in Dickinson, it appears Bradford essentially started over in Hot Springs, Arkansas. In the mid-90s, he bounced between jobs, met a woman, married, had 2 kids, and was otherwise unremarkable. But on April 16th, 1996, we know exactly where Dennis Bradford was. This spot. Back then, it was a local dive called Gators. And that night, he met a woman.
For some odd reason, she feels
that it's okay to go for a ride with this guy.
That decision proved nearly fatal for that woman. In what would turn out to be an eerily similar crime to the Shuett case, police say Bradford kidnapped, raped, and terrorized his victim.
Takes a knife and holds it to her throat, telling her that he's going to kill her.
But he didn't. Instead, according to a police report, Dennis Bradford, after beating, choking, and ordering the young woman to clean the blood off herself, let her go. Right here at this Hot Springs racetrack. Bradford then drove home to his wife and children.
He was convicted of kidnapping back in 1996 and was given a 12-year sentence.
We asked Dinah Tyler with the Arkansas Department of Correction to review the ex-con's prison record.
He had some rule violations, but none of them was violent, and all of them pretty much were for not following orders, which was typical.
Serving a third of his sentence, at that time pretty normal in Arkansas, Bradford was paroled in April 2000.
Had he been in violation of the terms of his parole, he would have been revoked and sent back to the Department of Correction.
Put an asterisk next to that statement because we dug up a North Little Rock police report from 2001. It turns out Bradford was convicted of misdemeanor DUI, but it didn't bust his parole.
I felt like, I needed to give the guy a chance.
Bradford caught another break that year. Brother and sister Billy and Cheryl Briggs decided to hire him to work at their fence company. They say Bradford made it clear he was a convicted felon, but quickly fit in.
Never gave anybody any trouble other than, flirting with the girls, but...
Really? I mean,
we loved him.
They weren't alone. Bradford found a new love. He got married again and started another family and inherited 3 stepchildren. One of them answered the door.
Well, right now we have no comment to say to anything.
Nothing at all?
No. I apologize. It's been pretty hectic.
The people in Bradford's life were left wondering just who the man was they were calling their friend and neighbor. For some, seeing him as anything else just isn't possible.
I'm going to wait and see. I certainly hope it isn't true. But we'll see what happens with the court system, how the evidence lays out, and just take it from there.
If the evidence is as strong as the FBI says it is, Dennis Bradford's likely never to set foot in Arkansas again. 19 years of borrowed time, Jennifer Shuett says she paid for.
I hope that my case will remain as a reminder to all victims of violent crime to never give up hope in seeking justice, no matter how long it may take or how hard it may be.
I feel sorry for everybody involved. If he's the one, I'm glad they were able to solve the case. If he's the one.
What's so striking is that this tragedy is not just Jennifer Shuett's, but everybody who was connected to Dennis Bradford. I mean, they all got blindsided.
Yeah, you're right. And there are a lot of people who are connected to Dennis Bradford, not just his coworkers, but we're talking about his family. He's a father of 5, essentially. He has 2 of his own children and then 3 stepsons. Imagine that going through a situation where your dad is suddenly taken away from you, supposedly for something he did 20 years ago. I mean, each of these kids, his wife, even his ex-wife, is now going through that situation. His best friend who I talked to in Arkansas said, I can't believe it. That's not the Dennis that I knew. I just can't believe it.
One person who wasn't in your story was Dennis's first ex-wife. What was her take on all of this?
She didn't want to talk on camera per se, but I did meet her in Hot Springs. And she said, look, I'll tell you what I know. And that is, I remember perfectly when Dennis was arrested for that crime in Hot Springs. I remember that night to the T. Dennis didn't come home, and that wasn't all that uncommon. But what was different this time is that police came looking for him. And she said that was essentially the end of our marriage.
Have you had a chance to talk to Dennis Bradford at all?
I haven't talked to Dennis Bradford, but it's not for lack of trying. I've written him letters. I've tried to get a hold of him through his lawyer, but to no end. That's not to say, though, that I haven't been following the case. In fact, just a few weeks ago, there was a pretty interesting development. His lawyer has apparently filed a motion now for examination regarding insanity. So this could very well be part of their defense when that trial comes up.
All right. Excellent work, Joel. Well, I'll bet somebody else who's counting down the days leading up to this trial is Jennifer Shuett, and we're going to find out how she's using her story to help others. To be a survivor takes a huge strength of will. To find that in an 8-year-old is inspirational. You can see it in this picture. Still connected to tubes and IVs, she stands victorious. KPRC Local 2 anchor Joel Eisenbaum ends our story where it began, with a girl, now a woman, named Jennifer Schuett.
The Use Your Voice shirts, and how I did that to encourage others to speak out along with me.
Use your voice. That's been Jennifer Schuett's mission statement since she was 8 years old, when a brutal attack ended with her throat being cut. Doctors thought the little girl singing just days before would never speak again, but young Jennifer was bound and determined to catch her attacker.
I've told my story to so many people in hopes of remembering everything and never forgetting anything, because I just want to be able to get this case solved, and I know that the more I can remember, the easier it might be.
She started a website called Justice for Jennifer.
And I use my website just as a tool, so that everybody can read about my story. I mean, I even have my website on the back of my car, just so people will go to it.
What began as a way to get the few pieces of evidence from her case out into cyberspace has become a light in the dark for other victims, those too afraid to use their own voices.
People email me through my website and remind me that I told them my story back in 6th grade and got them to open up, and that they had, been molested, and that even in, 6th grade I was encouraging people to go to the police. I helped them, and now they're writing me and reminding me of those things.
19 years later, you can still see the marks left by her attacker's knife, still see the hole left by the tubes in the hospital.
People have asked me if I wanted to get plastic surgery to cover it up or anything like that. I would never do that. It's just a survival story now.
A story Jennifer has kept close, but not just to be ready for her day in court.
I do feel like, being a survivor, that I owe that to other victims, to not be quiet. Because being quiet in my head means that I'm letting him win. And he's not going to. This is a battle that he will lose, ultimately. And I need to do this for other people and for myself.
A man has been arrested. A court date is on the horizon, but it could be another year of waiting for Jennifer before another call to tell her story again. But this time she will be in the witness chair, feet away from the man charged with kidnapping, raping her, and then trying to silence her forever. Jennifer says she can't wait to tell her story one last time.
I just want to be able to move on, not leave behind my story and everything, but just kind of knowing that he's in jail and that he can't hurt anyone else is what I want more than anything.
The trial of Dennis Bradford could start as early as November.
Yeah, really heartbreaking stuff, right? Nothing to joke about, nothing to play with. Not words you just throw around. Happens more than you know.
Attempted child abductions at the world's busiest airport this morning. A woman is facing charges after police say she tried to take 2 young children at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. Latasha Givens live in the newsroom with what we know. What happened here, Latasha?
Well, Sheba, the police say the woman was near the family when out of nowhere she grabbed a stroller with one of their children inside, but the mother quickly grabbed it back. But the stranger didn't stop there. Police say the woman then grabbed another child that was with the family and started walking away, but the father stepped in and pulled the child back. When police arrived, they say she was combative and had to be taken down to the ground in order to be placed in handcuffs. Now, one traveler told us she has conversations with her own child about this type of danger.
Running around, I was like, you got to stay close to mommy and daddy because people snatch up kids really easy. And don't go nowhere. If you don't know them, don't go nowhere.
And police believe the woman may have been under mental distress. She was treated at Grady, then taken to the Clayton County Jail. No word yet on her exact charges.
She's trying to take my daughter. Like, she's trying to take her, and she's probably gonna, I don't know what she's gonna do with her, hurt her.
And like any mom, she was willing to do whatever it took to protect her daughter. A Valley mom walking us through those scary moments. She fought off a woman who's accused of trying to kidnap her baby at a shopping center. It's the one near 19th Avenue in Bethany Home, and ABC 15's Mike Pelton speaking exclusively with that mom tonight. Mike, as a parent, this is scary stuff.
Yeah, and Katie, that mother, tells me she had a car seat and her 7-month-old daughter and had just made it to her car when another woman came up, claimed the baby was hers, and turned physical.
I kind of started crying after I realized, like, this actually happened. Like, somebody actually tried to kidnap my kid, from me.
Laura Valdez asked we not show her face, but described the fear.
She obviously thought my child was hers, and she was trying to take her.
Last Monday night, Laura says a woman spotted her 2-year-old and 7-month-old daughters as she and her kids left Target at the Christown Mall near 19th Avenue and Bethany Home.
And she's like, "That's my baby. Travis, come get the baby. The baby's over here." And I'm freaking out because I'm like, who's Travis?
Police later arrested 38-year-old Nicole Nutting. They didn't find anyone else with her. Laura says the woman turned from verbal to violent.
She grabbed the car seat when I was trying to put my daughter in the car. So when she pulled my hair, she kind of like pulled on the car seat. And I'm like, okay, this is getting serious.
Laura says that motherly instinct kicked in.
And I let go of the car seat and I just put her on the seat and I shut the door and I just start hitting her in the face.
According to court documents, investigators note Nutting is a danger to society, and they check the box indicating she is mentally disturbed.
Don't ever take your eyes off your children at all, because in 1 second, like, it could happen.
Yeah, and that mom just thankful she was able to get away. According to court documents, the suspect has a long criminal history ranging from assault to drug possession. For now, we're live in Phoenix tonight. Mike Pelton, ABC 15, Arizona.
Now, a teenage girl fighting for her life as a man tries to force her into his truck by repeatedly hitting her with a hammer. That violent struggle all caught on camera. And for the first time, we are hearing from that victim. NBC4's Tony Shin live in Riverside now, where police are still searching for the suspect. Tony.
And Kathy, according to that 14-year-old victim, she was just walking down this sidewalk you see behind me, heading to tennis class at around 8:15 yesterday morning. When she passed by that bushy-looking tree, a man suddenly grabbed her.
My parents have always taught us, be brave and be confident and just know who you are. And
she is only 14 years old, so we are only identifying this teen as Estella. Surveillance video shows early Tuesday morning, while walking down Rutland Avenue, Estella came face to face with a man in a white truck who police say tried to kidnap her.
He grabbed me by the neck with put me in a chokehold. He was strangling me and I was struggling and he was telling me get in, get in. He started telling me, he was like, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill you. And so that's when he started hitting me with the hammer. He hit me with the claw hammer on my head.
Striking her multiple times on the head, Estella refused to give up, elbowing the attacker as hard as possible.
He started choking me tighter and I felt like I couldn't breathe anymore.
That's when Estella says the man put down the hammer. So she grabbed it and struck him at least once on the arm.
I didn't have much arm swing, but I just tried to do what I could.
It was enough for him to let her go, and Estella ran as fast as she could as the kidnapper got back into his white Toyota Tundra and drove off.
The coward could not handle a young kid, so he had to use a hammer, and it didn't work out for him.
Estella's father says he couldn't be more proud of his daughter. Riverside police investigators also say she possibly saved her own life.
It shows how brave this girl was. She had the wherewithal after to be able to work with a sketch artist, provide us a pretty good description of the suspect and the vehicle.
Estella says the man is a predator who needs to be put behind bars as soon as possible.
Trying to ruin somebody's future by kidnapping them and taking them to go do God knows what, it's terrible.
Now, Estella had to get multiple stitches on her head, but she says she is doing just fine. Meantime, if you have any information about this suspect or his white Toyota Tundra, please call Riverside Police. Reporting live in Riverside, I'm Tony Shin, NBC4 News.
Crazy stuff, right? I mean, real life. It really happens. Every day, somewhere, it seems like it's happening. From little babies to grown adults. Now the question is, and it's a serious question, did this happen to Summer Wells? Now I know we don't know. And if you say you do, then you probably did it, because that's the only person other than the good Lord that could really know. But you know what I mean. In your mind, what are your thoughts? We're still rolling. We're just spinning off of the abduction theory that Donald Wells has been very vocal about since day one. Day one. That's abnormal in itself, but I'll leave it alone for now. And we're just going to keep looking at all these real examples of all the different things that could be happening to that baby girl based on what her father thinks happened. So let's keep rolling. Make sure you say their names, because all of these stories and all of these lives do matter. I pray that Summer doesn't end up on this list. I don't know if it beats the alternative or not, but I just pray that. Let's keep rolling.
Open the door! Police burst into a hotel room where they find the suspect accused of kidnapping an 8-year-old girl.
Hands! Let me see your hands! Step out here! Step out!
Officers rush inside.
Get on the ground!
It's a race against the clock to find the child, who was caught on a doorbell camera being snatched from her mother's arms.
Help me, please!
Mom and her daughter were on a stroll in their Fort Worth, Texas neighborhood when the nightmare began. Mom, who asked not to be named, tried desperately to fight off the kidnapper, but he sped away with the little girl inside the car. 8 hours later, police in nearby Forest Hills found the getaway vehicle in a hotel parking lot. Officers left after seeing no sign of the child. But cops from the Fort Worth Police Department went to the same hotel and did some more digging with the front desk hotel clerk.
Do you have the room information for room 333? I need like the person's name, when they checked in, all that stuff.
They think they found their guy.
There's a description.
Then they rush to room 333 and barge in.
Get on the ground!
The suspect is placed in handcuffs. Cops desperately search the room.
Hey, here she is! Got her! We got her! We got her!
The little girl popped her head out of this laundry basket where she had been hidden under a pile of clothes. She was afraid to make any noises because the suspect had threatened to hurt her and her family.
We have her.
And that bastard was naked.
We need an EMT!
Come on, sweetheart. You safe? You're gonna be okay.
51-year-old Michael Webb has just been sentenced to life in prison for kidnapping.
Hey, here she is! Got her! We got her! We got her!
He was accused of stealing the innocence of an 8-year-old girl, and now Michael Webb will spend the rest of his life in prison for it.
We hope, that this gives a measure of comfort to the victim and to the family and to this community, that he's never going to be out.
The life sentence was handed down in federal court Thursday, just 4 days shy of the 6-month mark of a crime that left a community and a family devastated. In May, Webb snatched a little girl at random from her mother's arms while they were on an evening walk in Fort Worth. Prosecutors say he then sexually assaulted her in the following hours.
I scoped it out pretty good, and I know I missed somebody because when I pushed the woman and grabbed her, I heard somebody screaming. I heard somebody screaming.
He admitted to the crime while police interrogated him. Prosecutors released...
Dirty bastard. And why is his ass hanging out right now? I have a problem with that. What a dirty bastard. 8 years old, and he was butt naked when they came in that motel room. Oh my God. He had been with that baby all damn day.
Two clips of that video confession after sentencing.
What did you say to scare her, Michael?
I told her that if she said anything, that I would do something to her parents. And if I was in jail, I would have my friends to do it.
They also released a photo from inside the hotel room where the girl was found with Webb. But out of sensitivity for the victim and her family, we are not showing it.
We feel that she represents a bravery and a courage and a strength that is just incomprehensible when you're thinking about an 8-year-old.
Webb's attorney had nothing to say after sentencing.
Mr. Stickney, can you please talk to us about the trial at all?
I'm not going to make any comment.
Webb could have faced as little as 20 years in prison for his crime, but he received the maximum sentence and is not eligible for parole.
When I asked the Tarrant County District Attorney if they were still pursuing the state's case against Webb in light of this life sentence, the office said they currently had no comment. Reporting in Fort Worth, I'm Lauren Zakalik.
God, I hate him so much. Damn predators. What's wrong with them? Oh, there's got to be a green pill we can just give them. That just, you know, put you to sleep forever. I don't know why it has to be green, but sounds disgusting, so why not? I mean, seriously, how can you just rip somebody from their comfort, from their life, a random person, and then take them wherever you want and do whatever you want? It's just, I don't even want to call it a sickness because I'm afraid to give it an excuse. Oh my God. Now we're going to get a little more into what SUMMERWELLS wants us to believe, which is that not only was Summer abducted, but that she was taken far, far away. So let's see what that's about. What exactly is that like in real life?
Brave 8-year-old girl saved herself and her little brother from a kidnapper. The kids were inside a car in a San Diego parking lot when police say a woman jumped inside and took off with the vehicle. The stolen car was headed for the border while the kids' terrified father prayed police would find them. Video showing the close call at the border. A 3-year-old boy and an 8-year-old girl in the back seat of that car. With guns drawn, police went in and arrested the driver.
Probably less than 2 minutes away from actually crossing the border.
It all started outside this beauty supply warehouse in Lincoln Park. Malay and her brother were in the back seat while their dad went in to buy her some hair supplies. The car and AC were running on a scorching Monday. He was gone for less than 2 minutes. That's when the woman made her move.
Right here. And this is where the lady was sitting. She looked at the car and she saw it running and she saw kids in it. Then she just got in it and drove away.
I ran out in the traffic and actually ran past cars.
I saw my dad coming out the store, then I started banging out the window and I yelled, "Daddy," but she rolled the window up.
But she ran the light. So I broke down in the middle of the street.
But Malay knew what to do. Her dad gave her a cell phone in case of an emergency, and this qualified.
They said 911, what's your emergency? And I said, me and my little brother got kidnapped. Then they said, where are you and what do you see? Then I said, I see signs that say Mexico border. She tried to take the phone from me, but then I moved away from her. And then she said, give me the phone or I'm gonna drive in circles and crash into the freeway wall.
Hearing what could have been brought her dad to tears. Malay says she eventually gave the woman the phone, but by that time, police knew where they were and made their move.
I'm very proud of her.
Police have not established a motive in that car theft and kidnapping. Investigators say the Cole family doesn't know the suspect.
At 10, a brave young girl stops the attempted abduction of a 4-year-old child.
Instead of running away, the 12-year-old took off after the man who is now charged with abduction of a child.
Corrine Zell talked to the families of both girls. She's live outside the Kenosha County Detention Center with the story. Corrine.
George and Carol, neighbors say this man was unusual. He would do yoga in the front yard in his underwear. He even asked the kids a lot of questions, specifically at one time about rape and kidnapping.
Yeah, I just ran after Kaylee because I didn't know what could have happened next if I wouldn't have ran down there.
12-year-old Jada Miller chased after her 4-year-old neighbor when other neighbor kids saw a man walk off with the girl.
I felt that if I had stopped to ring the doorbell, like the parents were too busy doing something, like they wouldn't get to the door in time, so I just went down there and did my own business.
Neighbors say Benjamin Spasogovich Lee moved in with family a couple months ago. The 27-year-old told neighbors his name was Elijah. They noticed his peculiar behavior right away.
He was stripping, when the bus came one day, he was stripping down to his underwear.
Jeff Carr called police on the man after he says Spasogovich Lee harassed
of underage individuals. We want it to be in the back of your head that you may be talking to one of us, and hopefully you will be talking to one of us. We're not going away. We're going to continue to do these types of stings.
109 survivors were rescued during the month of October. Green's agency, along with nearly 60 others, joined forces for Operation Autumn Hope. U.S. Marshals were able to close 84 missing child cases, where 45 children were rescued. 4 more returned home. 16 others were located.
There's estimates that around 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 of endangered runaways, which makes up the largest portion of these missing child cases, are being trafficked. Those are astounding numbers that we must collectively combat. We must recover these children.
During a news conference today in Columbus, law enforcement agencies and social service agencies joined Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost to announce the success of the operation. Columbus made 80 arrests. And in Franklin County, 8 men who traveled to central Ohio with the intent to have sex with children were arrested. Those involved in the operation say let this be a warning to those who are selling human beings and for those who are buying sexual services, that the next door you knock on could be that of an officer ready to arrest you.
A father accused of kidnapping his children and wife and then taking them to Mexico has found himself back in Nashville and in jail this morning. News Channel 5's Matthew Torres is out at the Criminal Justice Center with more on this story. Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning, Jennifer. This man is facing a slew of charges from previous incidents that happened last year. He never attended court for any of them after fleeing to Mexico, but not before threatening to kill his wife if she didn't come with him. And so she did with the children. This happened back in July, but it wasn't until late last night when 24-year-old Humberto Reyes Valadez was finally arrested. Police say his wife made up a story to come back to the U.S. and did so with her children in November. But it was again recently when he was finally brought back to face kidnapping charges as well as other charges stemming from a previous incident in May. That's when police say Reyes Valadez was arrested and charged with aggravated assault and public intoxication. He's accused of following a woman in his car and driving into her vehicle more than half a dozen times for no reason. And again, he never showed up to court for that one. But this morning, he is in jail facing multiple charges for that incident, as well as the most serious one, which is the kidnapping of his wife and children to Mexico.